Welcome into another episode of Credentialed. And this is a fun one and a special one because you're meeting one of my dear friends. Some of you probably know her from the news if you've lived in that certain region where she's worked. Her name is McCloy. And thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Jillian.
Yes. Okay. So, I'm so excited about this because you and I we've been friends for a long time. You worked in Nashville along with one of my dear friends, Erin Como. And so we've crossed paths a couple of times. We've done a girls' trip together, but we became really close in the last, I'd say, 15 to 16 months when we both made this huge pivot and change in our lives. Before we get to that, let's take people back a little bit just to get to know you. Can you talk about a little bit of your background and how you got started in news?
Sure. So I was one of those people that wanted to be on TV my entire life. Like I was on the morning announcements in eighth grade, and that made me want to be a news anchor. So I'm from Arizona. I went to the Walter Cronkite School at Arizona State, and they have a great journalism program. And so from there, I got a job right out of college. I moved to the great state of Oregon, and started as a weekend reporter at 22 years old. I moved my way up to the morning anchor desk there. And then from Oregon, after 4 years, moved to Nashville, Tennessee. And so I worked for NBC in Nashville for 3 years on the morning show, doing that same shift that you're used to, Jillian.
Oh, yes. Waking up at midnight, going to bed around 6 p.m. It's a joy.
It's so
It's just a
fun,
great social life.
especially if you're living in Music City and there's so much to do. When you can hear the music from Broadway from your apartment and you have to
Oh,
go to sleep at 6 o'clock p.m. It was really fun. But
that's the worst.
I loved Nashville, but I was on the morning news in Nashville, the NBC there for 3 years doing breaking news and anchoring. And then I got an opportunity to be the evening anchor here where I live now in the New York State capital, Albany, New York. And so I spent almost 9 years on the anchor desk here in Albany, doing political reporting and anchoring and covering general news. And that's where you and I became closer friends.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, for people who are listening now, if you're unfamiliar with the TV industry, the broadcast industry, the traditional route is you move around to all these different small towns, you get your experience in smaller markets before you go on to the bigger markets. And you never know, first of all, sometimes you never know like a single soul where you're moving. You also never know what that opportunity and what that town or that city or that area is going to bring you. Like you go in sometimes for a year, 2, 3 year long contracts, and you've no idea how it's going to touch you, how it's going to change your life. And how you're going to be on the other side of it. And that's Albany for you because you went to Albany not knowing anybody, correct? And then coming out with a whole life, a husband, friends. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just you and I talked about this. I went up to your house not that long ago in June for your baby shower, which we will talk about shortly. But we talked about how it's just so interesting that you make these decisions in life as you did with taking a job in Albany, and it forever changes your life.
Absolutely. I mean, I told you I wanted to be on TV. I wanted to be on the Today Show since I was a little girl. And so I never planned to leave the news business. I was going to be a lifer in the news business. So I came to Albany because it's only 2.5 hours driving distance from New York City. And I figured it was all very strategic. I thought I'd come here, I would become the evening anchor, learn politics, learn about New York State, and then eventually go to the big city. But when I got here, I realized, wow, it's beautiful in upstate New York. It's so close to the city, I can go down there for the weekend and I don't have to deal with all of the traffic and all of the stress of living in a city. And
And the
then,
cost of living, by the way,
oh, absolutely.
wild.
The cost of living, the crime, I don't have to deal with any of that. And then I ended up by chance meeting my husband and amazing friends. And so it just changes you. I think also moving around changes you because you realize after living in a really small town where I did in Oregon and then living in a big city like I did in Nashville, the big city didn't make me happy. Like, do you know what I mean? I think when you're younger, maybe, and in college or even in high school, you're thinking, oh, like you watch movies and you see New York City and you think, oh, if I can get to the big city, that'll make me happy. Or if I have this dream job, that's going to make me happy. And so I actually think the journey of moving to all of those places made me realize actually what makes me happy is what matters in life, the people around me, ease of lifestyle is a big part of it. But when I met my husband, that was a game changer.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I found the same to be true. I lived in Manhattan, as you know, for about 4.5 to 5 years, working in national television, and I'm super grateful for that time and that experience. But I never felt at home living in Manhattan. I think Manhattan is amazing. It is a robust, electric city like no other. You can walk down the street of Manhattan and cross paths with, who knows who, thousands, hundreds of people, and be who you want and be anything you want. Like, that's the cool part about Manhattan. You have so much accessible at your fingertips, but
Mm-hmm.
it's very lonely at times. I personally found it to be very lonely. I thought I was sort of crazy for having these thoughts of like, you want to get to the big city, as you just referenced, right? That's always in the back of your mind as sort of a goal, like maybe I'll get there one day.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I did, it was the loneliest I had ever been in my entire life. And it puts it into perspective. And you realize that living in Albany, of being in a city or a town or an area where it is beautiful. Like, your town is beautiful. Saratoga is not far from you. The
Yeah.
restaurants, the scene there, the shopping, you have horse racing there, the track is there. There's something so special about that lifestyle where you can make a home for yourself.
I know it's silly, but I think that when you're growing up or even in your 20s, you're really into what's cool. Like it sounds really cool to live in the big city, but when you're not making $1 million a year, living
Yeah,
in
all of a sudden
Manhattan,
it's not that cool.
it's not that cool. No. So,
Yeah, it's so true. So you were in news in Albany for years. You established a life there. And then in 2023, you changed directions and you did pivot and you took that leap that a lot of people have a hard time sort of working up the courage and the confidence to say, this is everything I've worked for, but I'm willing to step back from it and I'm willing to give it up because there are other things in life that are more important to me. I think it's interesting to share those stories because at one point or another, every single person listening either has or will have that thought of, oh my gosh, do I do this? Do I take this leap of faith? Um, what was it for you? Like, what was that moment that brought you there where you were like, you know what, I'm going to do this and I can do this?
well, really, it was a perfect storm of a few things. First of all, the pandemic. I became a political reporter during the pandemic, and I was covering Governor Andrew Cuomo every day, like 7 days a week during COVID. So it was interesting because that political reporting actually garnered the most attention for me that I've ever had in regards to my journalism. Some of my reports went viral. My reporting was seen internationally, and basically, I could have taken all of that and I could have gone to the national news, which was always my goal. And so, and I think it was 2022, at the beginning of 2022, I realized that I was completely burned out. I was doing political reporting every single day, and just the volatility of it, the divisiveness was really getting to me. I'm a happy person. I was never really into politics, but I happened to be good at covering it. So that was one thing that was getting to me. The other thing was I was trying to have a kid. I was trying trying to get pregnant. And it wasn't happening at first. And so we went to a doctor, and there's nothing wrong with me. And so the doctor just said, honestly, I think the burnout and the stress is impacting you physically. And he recommended that I take a break from reporting, which it was such a hard decision. I mean, I still get emotional talking about it because, as I told you, I moved all over the country for the job, and I spent 18 years doing television, and it was never my intention to step away from it. I thought that I could do it forever. But when the doctor made that recommendation, I was trying to imagine my life, having a child, working 12-hour days, dealing with, politicians' offices, texting me and emailing me at all times of the day. And I was starting to interview at the network level, and making that jump, I'd be at the kind of the bottom of the totem pole of the network. And so I would have to travel. I would be traveling, 4 weeks at a time. And so how was I going to have a baby and do all of that traveling? Now, I could have done it. A lot of people make it work, but it kind of came down to, what do you want in life? Do you want that kind of life where your family takes the back seat? Or do you want a life where your family's first? And, kind of that lifestyle thing I was talking about, where the ease of lifestyle, where I have a beautiful place to live and I can kind of be quiet and slow with my kids.
And it's hard though, right? So it takes a little while to sort of have those thoughts. And for you, this was sort of doctor's orders. This was a prescription for you to take a step back. But then you decided to take it a step further and say, I'm going to walk away from this. It's really hard to do that. How did you find the courage in yourself? What was the one thing, maybe aside from the doctor's orders, because you did take a few months off, as the doctor had suggested, but then you walked away from it. How did you find the confidence to do that? Because I know for me, it came down to anxiety attacks, like waking up in the middle of the night, heart palpitations. Like it came down to me physically feeling like my body's reaction to this and having to listen to that and say, I need to be the one to make this change. Like my life isn't going to change around me. It's not just going to happen. What was it for you, and how hard was that? And how did you find the courage?
I think I knew deep down that I needed to leave the news, but I went on leave for months because, well, I had to for what I was going through with my health, but it took me that long to kind of break up with the news in my head and go, okay, I can do something else. So the first step to leaving the news was, what else would I do if I didn't do this? And I have a whole other personality that was never really seen on the news, because I was the evening anchor doing politics, talking in the very serious news voice, doing breaking news and, top stories, national news, and politics. It's a lot different from a whole other side of my personality, which is, my mom had a clothing store when I was growing up. So I was very into fashion because she owned a boutique for 20 years. And I started looking at the videos that all of us watch on Instagram of just fashion videos and product recommendations. And it's so different from what I've done. But to me,
we weren't allowed to do that stuff.
I know. It's fun. So I was watching Instagram videos and going, I wish I could create those videos. And also, I was looking at my life, what I'm going through personally with trying to have a child, and even decorating my home. I am really into home decorating and just making things around me beautiful. So I was like, why don't I just start trying to make content that's different, that's beautiful, that is fashion forward, that is just more fun. And so I had that idea, and that's kind of when you and I got a little bit closer with our relationship, and I told you what I really wanted to be doing. And I
was like, do it. Like, you have one life. Like, do what makes you happy. Do what brings you joy. Do what you are passionate about. And sure, I'm not going to sit here and say that that's going to pay the bills all the time, right? Because we'll talk about this too. Like there are ups and downs when you rebrand yourself, when you go out, when you jump off that ledge, take that leap of faith, right? There's a lot of ups and downs, there's a lot of struggles, there's a lot of am I doing the right thing? Second guessing, self-doubt. You and I have had phone call after phone call after phone call of both of us. Like it's so funny for those watching or listening. Like one week it'll be Anne's week. She's like, oh, I'm not sure. The next week it'll be my week. I'm like, oh, I'm not sure. Like, but you have your friends, you have your passions, you have your joys, you have people that you lean on. And at the end of the day, when you're listening to your heart, like you can't lose.
It's so true. And I will say, Jillian, you have been like, you've been an amazing friend and therapist through this journey.
Back at you.
I honestly couldn't have done some of these things without your support, and I thank you so much for it. But you really need a support system when you make a decision like this, and it was helpful to have a friend in the business that understood what I was going through, because not really everyone can understand what it's like to sacrifice 20 years of your life for a career and then all of a sudden to just let it go. It's like mourning a loss. And it's still, that's why you can start crying just thinking about it. Like, did I do the right thing? I mean, I could have gone to one of the big networks to work for the news, and I just decided to walk away from all of that time and effort and moving everywhere. It's, not everybody can understand moving to 3 states without knowing anyone, having to eat dinner by yourself, for months every time I moved somewhere. You think about all of those sacrifices that you made, and working holidays, working at 3 o'clock in the morning. What was it for? You kind of wonder. So those are the things that come into play when you make the decision. But on the other hand, are you going to stay in a job where you're going into work and you're going, okay, well, it's either doing this really stressful job or having a baby, or it's doing this really stressful job that I'm not really happy in just because I have a good title and because it's a cool job. I mean, it's a tough one.
It is. And who's to say you can't go back to it though, right? You are now pregnant with twin girls.
Yes.
So your life is unfolding. I'm a big believer in things happening the way they're supposed to. Like your life is unfolding the way it's supposed to. And so now that that's happening and you're not far away from being a mama, how do
8
you
weeks.
feel?
I feel absolutely incredible, and I'm Christian. I'm a big believer. I'm big on faith, and I believe that when I made the decision to step away from the news, that's when everything fell into place with my pregnancy. It took several months after I left to get that positive pregnancy test, but I didn't end up with one child. I ended up with 2 babies in here, and I think that's because I made the space for it in my life. I feel like it was totally a gift from above, and it's because I made that. It was a test. It was testing me. What do you want? Do you want to go? Do you want to go travel and work for one of the biggest news organizations, or do you want the family? And I don't think that I really do not believe that I would have had both things happen. And I mean, I'm 38, so it's not like there's a ton of time left for, making babies. So I'm very, very happy. But, there's also the flip side, which is I still have that drive. I have a drive to create. I have a drive to, I'm entrepreneurial. I think even as a person on the news, even though you're working for a corporation or a big company, when you work for the news, you create your own identity and brand. And so I'm used to that. I'm used to coming up with story ideas. I'm used to building relationships with people. And I have that credibility and trust with so many people from around the country. And so now that I'm not in that space, I go, what can I do with all of those things next? What can I do from home? How can I connect with others? And so that's what I'm working on.
And you're sharing some of your journey online about, your pregnancy and about, you talked about fashion and about home decorating, and you're getting a chance to showcase those important and special parts of you that you weren't able to showcase before. It takes a little bit to get there though, right? So we're about 15, 16 months ish out of leaving the news. And I think that a lot of people can relate to this if you've gone through some sort of pivot or transition in life. Anytime you make a big decision like that, you almost go through a bit of an identity crisis. Like, well,
Yeah.
who am I now? And for you and I, where our identities for so long were wrapped up in our career and we're wrapped up with being like, oh, you're Anne from the news. Oh, you're Jillian from the news. Hey, love watching you. Suddenly you go through this sort of crisis where you're like, am I relevant to anyone anymore? Like, what
Yeah.
is my identity now? Who am I now? It's scary, but at the same time, it's very cool, I think, to have the opportunity to go through that, because you then determine exactly who you want to be and exactly what you want to do. And it hasn't been an easy 15, 16 months for me. Just a few months ago, really, when I woke up that morning in March, when I was like, oh my gosh, I know what I need to do. I need to create this course for soft professional skills, and because I'm seeing this gap out there. And so I started a website where I'll have multiple courses out there, skillstudiocourses.com, little plug. But it wasn't until like a year later that I was like, I know what I need to do. And I feel like I'm doing now exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, but it takes a long time.
I remember the day that you told me when you came up with the idea for the course, and I saw the vision right away. And it was amazing because you keep telling me this. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what I'm doing. I'm kind of testing out what I want to do. I'm in an exploratory phase. But you did that for about a year, and then when you had your aha moment, I could see it so clearly, and I'm so proud of you, and I know that so many people are going to learn from your experiences through this course. So I'm just ecstatic for you.
Thank you. And you helped me actually come up with the name for it. We had a little powwow session. I called Anne like we do every day, and I'm like, I need your help. So
And I
what would you
love
tell
you.
people? Because there's a lot of mental and emotional ups and downs in making a big change. What would your advice be to someone who's maybe listening, thinking, I've been thinking about making a change in my life. Now that you're, a year and some change out of that, what would you say to someone?
Well, it's not simple, but I'm a big list person. I write things down. I really do. I'm a pros and cons person. Um, you have to really just write down what is your why, what do you want in your life, and really think about these things. And I don't think that the decision, when you make a decision like this, it's not like an aha, I'm going to do this. It's real. These are really hard decisions, and you'll go back and forth for a while on it. But I think writing helps. You suggested journaling back when I was trying to make the decision. Um, but I also think it's just important to kind of explore, like, what would the next thing be? Because I think it's hard to leave something without knowing what's next. And so when I kind of figured out the direction that I could go in, and when I could envision what the next step was, it was easier to pull the plug on the old. And it's also important to remember that, you know, what's in the past is in the past. So even though I spent so much time in the news, it all can be for something else. It doesn't have to be the news for my entire life. All of those skills that I learned can go toward something else really beautiful and maybe even way better. But are you going to make the choice to stay stagnant where you are, or are you going to take the leap and go through all the hard work to get to the next level?
I'm so glad that you mentioned that and said it like that. Like, are you going to stay stagnant, or are you going to do that hard work to take the leap? Because one of my favorite quotes is, and it's an unknown quote, but evolve or repeat. It's so simple, it's so basic, but it's so profound. And I believe in it wholeheartedly, because it's very easy to sit in a comfortable job where you enjoy the job, but okay, maybe it's not your passion anymore. Maybe it's not giving you that same joy anymore, but it's giving you the paycheck, right? And look, the paycheck and the stability and the health insurance and all of that, those are big things that we cannot downplay, right?
Huge.
But at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, you have to be happy too, because we do have one life. So then I asked you, like, what does happiness mean to you?
Happiness means, at this point in my life, time. I think that before, the paycheck meant more. And being totally transparent, in my relationship with my husband, he thankfully makes enough money to pay our bills. So, I mean, I'm putting that out there because it's not easy for everybody to just quit their job. And
Yep.
so I don't think, I'm not telling everybody out there to just go and quit your job. I definitely, for most of my life, I provided for myself. I put myself through college. I was raised by a single mom for most of my life, and we struggled. So having a career and making a lot of money was a big priority for me for most of my life. I didn't even know, being married, like I didn't know if my husband could take on all of the bills. So those were decisions that we had to look and make those
You're
financial.
also having two babies
Right. I
soon.
mean, and also, I mean, we had just bought a new house when I decided to leave the news. We were doing renovation work. And so I was not sure that that was the right time to step away from everything. But we have those conversations, and we decided, I mean, it was a big decision for my husband too. And it
Yeah.
was it was hard for him. He's seen all the work that I've done locally in the news, and he was like, "Are you sure? Are you sure you want to make that decision?" But um, the paycheck and having that extra money at this point in our lives is not as important as having the time. And well, really, the number one thing was having kids and having that lifestyle where I'm going to be available for dinner. I'm going to be available to tuck them in. I'll be available for breakfast. Um, Eventually, hopefully, I'll have enough time to do what I want to do, which is start a business or maybe do some media on the side, maybe freelance work. But right now, it's it's content creation. That's what I can fit in because I can do that from home, and just trying to grow, basically, my social media.
And where can people find you?
They can find me on Instagram and Facebook, at the Ann McCloy. I'm also on Twitter. That's where usually I post about politics. But on Instagram and Facebook is where I'm most active these days, talking about family life, fashion, home, and I'll be opening up a lot more about the journey that I've taken.
Yes, and we're going to be looking forward to seeing adorable photos of two sweet little girls in not that long of time. You were just
I know.
getting your nursery ready this week, so you're
Yeah.
home making all the house adjustments and everything that you need to make.
I know. I was going to say, I don't know if anyone can hear the noise in the background, but they're hanging the chandelier in the nursery right now. So it's right across the hallway. You might have heard it.
Well, it's only a matter of time, and your friendship means so much to me. And that's one of the important things in life too, is like when you're going through something, whether it be a pivot in life, just whether it be an up or a down, like having people to lean on and being vulnerable and honest and transparent with, hey, you know what? I don't have it all together right now. I need someone to talk to. Or, hey, I'm having a hard time. I need someone to talk to. Like having those people in your life is so important, I think, for anyone at any stage of what they're going through in life.
I think so too. And it doesn't happen. I feel like friendships like this don't happen all the time. Like we are so lucky that we had each other through this experience of this transition. So I'm so grateful for you. And I'm so grateful for everyone listening and all the connections to be made. So.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so we're gonna talk again. We're gonna be back on here again. Not sure if it'll be pre or post babies. TBD on that, but thank you for joining me. Thought it was important to get your story out there, because especially for those who know you and have watched you, to at least hear what's going on in your life, and for everyone else just to hear a story of someone who, has had an amazing career and is choosing family right now and making those changes in life. And I don't know, I think these are important conversations to have. Anything else before we go?
I don't think so. I think we covered a lot, but I appreciate you and thank you so much.
All right, another episode of Credentialed in the books. See you next time.